Welcome to From the Quarries. Tonight's presentation, The Masonic Relation Between Spirit and Matter, is taken from a wonderful compendium called Masonic Notes that was first published in 1919 and was edited by Captain C.C. Adams. This is a lovely collection of Masonic poems, articles and other extracts, and I'm particularly attracted by the description on the front page that it is a publication to encourage and facilitate intercommunication between Masonic students in all parts of the world. It sounds like that would make a great mission statement for From the Quarries. I hope you enjoy it.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's presentation, From the Quarries, an archive of Masonic lore.
The Masonic Relation Between Spirit and Matter, being an extract from an address given by the editor in December 1918. Brethren, this short address is intended to suggest lines along which you can work for yourselves in developing and understanding the true meaning of some of our more important symbols. It only covers a very small portion of the ground for research along these lines, which is accessible to the Master Mason. I shall refer to symbols in all the 3 degrees of craft masonry, but those who have explored further will be enabled to follow some of my analogies into those realms which lie beyond the pale of the symbolic lodge. It is open to question whether a number of our symbols, such as the point within the circle or the knocks in the different degrees, have any hidden meaning beyond that which is given in our rituals. But this is a question which every brother must decide for himself. We have ready access to little further explanation outside the rituals and lectures, but it is possible that the brethren who put our ceremonies into their present form did know more than we often give them credit for, and purposely concealed real truths in this way. We must remember that in the Middle Ages, a great deal of hidden knowledge in Europe was in the hands of alchemists and Rosicrucians, and the relations which such men had with the craft was probably of an intimate nature. Hence, it is at any rate possible that there are hidden meanings which I have indicated, and under the circumstances, I think you will agree that it is our duty to think these things out for ourselves, and then each individual must form his own opinion as to whether anything significant has been discovered or not. My present object is to follow the hidden teachings of Masonic symbols so far as they concern the relations between spirit and matter, that is to say, God and man. In almost every religion of importance which the world has known, the deity has had a threefold aspect and been worshipped as a trinity. We all know the Christian Trinity, and I may mention the Hindus have the Trinity of Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. The ancient Egyptians had the Trinity of Osiris, Isis, and Horus. The Scandinavians worshipped Odin, the Almighty Father, Freya, his wife, and Thor, the Sun, the mediator. In the Middle Ages, even the Kabbalists who were Jews worshipped Jehovah under the aspect of Abba, the Almighty Father, Ama, the Great Mother, and the Son, the mediator, the lesser countenance. From this, it requires no stretch of imagination to see why the deity has at all times been represented by the number 3, and the symbol of the triangle which has been found in nearly every part of the world. Now let us consider matter. If you ask a chemist of today how many different essential varieties of matter there are, he will probably say that all matter is composed of elemental particles or atoms, and that the number of known elements is between 80 and 90. If you had asked this same question 400 years ago, you would very likely have received the reply that all matter is composed of the 4 elements of earth, air, fire, and water in different proportions. That is what the ancients generally believed, and consequently we find that alchemists and medieval scientists represented the material bodies by the number 4 and the Greek cross of 4 equal arms, or, more commonly, the square. Thus we have the symbol of 3 to represent spirit and 4 to represent matter. Everything is included under one or other of these headings, so that the total of these, or 7, is called the number of completion or perfection. Our lectures say that 7 Masons make a lodge perfect, and now I think you know why. Remember too that the 7th day was the perfection of creation, when God rested after he had made the heaven and the earth, and that every 7th year the Jews had a year of rest, and every 7 times 7 years a year of Jubilee, as indicated in Leviticus chapter 25. Further, in the book of the Revelations of St. John the Divine, we read of the book with the 7 seals, which could be opened only by the perfect initiate. Now this division of the perfect number 7 into 2 parts, 3 to symbolize spirit and 4 to symbolize matter, has 1 or 2 rather significant analogies. In the Christian Church there are, properly speaking, 7 sacraments, although some of these have fallen into disuse. There are the 3 greater sacraments corresponding to the Divine Trinity: marriage, ordained in paradise by God the Father; the Eucharist, instituted by God the Son, bread for the substance or body, wine for the spirit; and baptism, instituted by God the Holy Spirit by water at the outer ceremony, by fire at the inner or confirmation ceremony; and the 4 lesser sacraments, instituted by the Church on earth: ordeal, unction, penance, and holy orders. These date from the early Christian Church and were probably in use when our rituals began to take their present shape. The 7 ceremonial offices of this early church are equally significant. There were 3 greater officers who were in holy orders: the priest, deacon, and subdeacon, and 4 lesser officers: the acolyte and thurusar, who were the messengers of the church; the exorcist, whose duty it was to keep out unclean spirits; and lastly, the doorkeeper. Still more significant from our own point of view are the 7 officers required to work ceremonies in a craft lodge. There are 3 principal officers, symbolizing the spirit, namely the master and the 2 wardens. You will note that these 3 are raised above the floor of the lodge. The 4 lesser officers are, of course, the senior deacon and the junior deacon, the inner guard, and the tiler. These correspond very nearly with the lesser officers of the church, of which I spoke a few moments ago. The deacons are the messengers of the lodge and correspond to the acolyte and thurifer. The duty of the inner guard is to keep outside the door of the lodge that which should not enter it. This corresponds to the duty of the exorcist, who keeps out unclean spirits. And I think the analogy between the doorkeeper and the tiler is an obvious one. Another interesting point in these analogies is the dismissal of the assembled worshippers. This was performed by the deacon of the church, the corresponding officer to our senior warden, who pronounced the words "Ite missa est" as the license to depart. I now wish to turn for a moment to the 3 degrees of our system. The first degree is the degree of birth, and for the present need not be considered further. The second degree is the degree of life in the material world, the degree in which a man is taught to think and work, the degree of the craftsman and matter. The chief working tool of this degree is the square, which symbolizes stability and is fitly an emblem of things material as contrasted to those which are spiritual and eternal. Also, in ancient times the earth was believed to be square. On the other hand, the third degree is the degree of the spirit. It teaches man the relation between himself and his Creator, and how he must face death that he may rise to life eternal. The compasses are the chief working tool of this degree, and by their revolution are the very antithesis of the stability and matter which are represented by the square. In former times, the heavens were believed to be a dome or sphere, and the compasses would be the correct implement for their representation. We are told in our lectures that the square is the emblem of the craft in general, while the compasses are restricted to the Grand Master. From another standpoint, I think we can fairly say that the square is the emblem of man or matter, while the compasses may be referred to God, the Grand Master of heaven and earth. Now I want you to consider the square and compasses as two of the greater lights and their relative positions during the different ceremonies. The first degree is the most essentially material degree. It teaches us to subjugate our passions and to cultivate the virtues which will enable us to lead a pure life. This life does not, however, come in the first degree, and the Spirit of God is concealed under the material body of man. In the second degree, the craftsman is leading the purer life inculcated by the teachings of the former degree and is learning to use his mind as well as his body. To complete the chain of thought, we are taught in the third degree to contemplate the future state and to learn the relationship between man and his Creator. When this lesson has been learned, the Spirit has completely conquered matter, and the compasses of the Spirit have obtained complete mastery over the square of matter. The orders of architecture also have a lesson to teach with regard to this same subject. If we measure the heights of the various portions of the columns, we find that the base measures 4 units, the shaft 12, and the capital 3. 4 is the number of the physical or material world. 3 is the number of the spiritual or heavenly world, and 12 you will have no difficulty in recognizing as the number of the craftsman or working mason. The number 12, being the product of the material and spiritual numbers, fitly represents the man striving from the one to reach the other, the man who is no more an apprentice, but has not yet arrived at the sublime degree of a master mason. Further, in the Irish and American rituals, 12 is the number of the fellow crafts who set out to search for the master, the symbol of the spiritual. But little further explanation is needed. The base of the column is the physical life, solid, material, and unadorned. The capital is the realm of the spirit, the goal of man's efforts, beautiful and heavenly, and reaching to the throne of God himself. The shaft is Jacob's ladder. It reaches from earth to heaven, and is the path by which the man, the craftsman, leaves the material to ascend to the spiritual, that he may reign as the stars for ever and ever. Up to this point, there is one part of man which I have not mentioned, namely the soul. The soul is that in man which gives him his individuality, and was the gift of God to man in order that he might have free will. Some people are of the opinion that the soul does not exist as a separate entity, and that it is only another aspect of the divine spirit. But that is a question for discussion outside the Masonic Lodge. For our present purpose, we may consider the soul as a form of creation which is more spiritual than the body of man and more material than the divine spirit which is within him. Man, then, is composed of 3 essential parts: body, soul, and spirit, and these are represented in Masonic symbolism by the numbers 3, 5, and 7, respectively, the latter representing, as before, the number of perfection or completion. These numbers occur several times in our ceremonies. We are told that 3 rule a lodge, 5 hold a lodge, and 7 make it perfect, 7 being the perfect number. There are other connections in which these numbers appear in series, which will be obvious to the Master Mason. I have only lightly touched on a very extensive subject, but if you work on these lines, you will convince yourselves, if you are not already convinced, that the compilers of our ritual had in mind not only the secrets of a house-building fraternity, but the whole mystical experience, the return of man to his Creator.